morning, so fair to see. It's number 42 in the hymnal. It'll also be on the screen. I invite you to stand and join in singing our opening hymn, number 42.
Rob Sartain has agreed to light the chalice this morning as we remain standing and join together in the recitation of our covenant. Enriched by our differences and joined together in our search for meaning, we covenant with ourselves and each other to seek truth in a spirit of love, to strive for justice, and to serve others with a joyful heart.
I invite you to turn and greet your neighbor, shake their hand, say, "Glad you're here today."
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Delaware County, to everyone here in the sanctuary and on Zoom, and a special welcome to anyone who is visiting our congregation for the first time. No matter who you are, no matter who you love, no matter where you are welcome here. My name is Ruth Hendry, and I'm serving as your worship associate today. If you're viewing this service on Zoom, remember you can activate closed captioning if that's helpful for you. And if you'd like to talk with others after the service, there will be a virtual coffee hour. Just stay logged in and you will be able to talk with others online. If you are attending worship in person, please join us in Fellowship Hall for coffee hour after the service. Please join us in this centering song.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. We come here each Sunday carrying all of the feelings that we have, our joys, our sorrows, and everything else. Now is the time in our service where we invite you to drop a stone of joy or sorrow into our bowl of water. As the ripples form in the bowl, we remember that our joys and sorrows ripple through our community. We can carry them together. All are invited. If you are online, you are welcome to type your joys and sorrows into the chat. If you are in the sanctuary, you can line up along the edge and then go back to your seat through the center. Thank you. drop one last stone for the joys and sorrows of those on Zoom and of those who couldn't be with us this morning.
Amidst the sounds of joyful children, let's be together in meditation and in prayer. Within these walls and in the confines of a few brief moments, we pause amidst the strains and the conflicts which fill our world and which fill our very being. We pause and seek for strength and confidence and direction. We hope that we might gain further insight into the life about us and be helped to see the meaning of our days. May we find strength to meet all that life prepares for us. May we share our joys, and may we be comforted in our sorrows. Amen. Let's join in the spirit of life.
At this time in our service, we ask for your financial support. Your support, the free and generous support of each and every member and friend of this community is what fuels this community and its mission. Without your support, the flame of justice, community, and love cannot burn brightly and be a beacon in the world. You can text your donation to the number provided on the screen, and you are welcome to drop a check in the boxes in the back of the sanctuary beside the doors. Thank you for your generous contributions.
Gabby. Good morning. So our Time for All Ages today comes from the Reverend Jamie Dingus, who wrote this, and then I adapted it a little bit with some of my information, but a lot of the words are his. In my house, we talk about technology a lot. My wife, Jen, is an elementary technology specialist. That means that she teaches elementary school teachers how to use technology to teach their students. So when Jen goes into a classroom to teach a lesson using technology, the students are all really excited. They love it when Ms. Goldberg comes. She's like a celebrity. The teachers are not always as excited. Sometimes it can be hard to learn a new technology. Sometimes it can be hard to switch to a different technology, especially if the way you've been doing things is the way you've always done it, or it has some emotional connection to you. Maybe this is the way you taught your children, or this is the way that you taught someone important or meaningful in your life. But often the change is in the methods, not the end results. I have some fossils with me, and I'm going to give you an example to illustrate this. Does anyone know what this is? Oh, some people do. Does anyone under 12 know what this is? Maybe under 18 know what this is. Will Mina, do you know? It's a cassette tape. So this is a cassette tape. And what is it used for? Music. It's used for listening to music. But we don't really use these anymore, right? We use, well, we switched to CDs. Do we use these? Oh, no, we don't use these. What do we use to listen to music? Streaming service, or our phones maybe, or maybe some of us still have MP3 players, but we use a streaming service. We use Apple Music or Spotify or Pandora or whatever we use. So the technology changed, but something stayed the same. What stayed the same? Music. We want to listen to music. So we changed technologies, but the root of it, the core of it, the thing that we want most, the thing that we love most, music, stayed the same. What is this? A tape, a VCR tape, right? What is this one used for? Movies. Okay, so we had this, and then we had DVDs, right? Maybe some of us still use DVDs, but how do most of us get our movies now? Streaming service. It's amazing that, So we go to Netflix, or we go to Amazon Prime, or we go to whatever streaming service we have, and we watch our movies. So the technology changed, but what stayed the same? Movies. We want to be able to watch our movies. The core thing, the thing that we love or want to do, stayed the same. What are these? Does anyone under 18 know what these are? Anyone under 25? All right. These are floppy disks. What were they for? Data, saving data, sharing files, right? And then we shared files on one of these little things, a thumb drive. Hyperdrive or thumb drive. I have a chorus of tech people back in the back here. Now how do we share files or share data with people? Or how do we save things? Rena suggested telepathically. I don't know if we're quite there yet. We save stuff to the cloud, right? We use Google Drive or Microsoft OneDrive or Dropbox or whatever we use, whatever sharing service we use. That's how we share. So the technology changed, but what stayed the same? The data, the fact that we still need to share files with people, we still want to save things that we write or create. So what's most important stays the same. but the way we do it changes over time. So in 1985, the Unitarian Universalist Association adopted a set of principles, 7 principles. And we haven't changed them since, except some congregations have added an 8th principle in recent years, but the UUA, the association level, hasn't changed the principles since 1985. That was roughly the year when cassette tapes started to be phased out and we moved to CDs. Now, a really wonderful team of leaders in our association has come up with a revision for the principles, with 7 core values that we can possibly all agree on, and those are equity, generosity, transformation, justice, pluralism, interdependence, and love. They are centered in love because love is at the center. Love is the one that influences all of those other things: equity, justice, transformation, generosity, pluralism, and interdependence, and love. So over the next few months, years, we will be talking about these. We will be trying to figure out if this new technology, these new values, are going to be the way that we can live out our Unitarian Universalist faith into the next generation, into this century. That's something that people will be talking about and voting on at General Assembly this year. There's a lot to think about here, and change is hard. It can be uncomfortable, but just like any time we adopt a new technology, it takes some time to adjust. But we know that as long as we commit to moving forward in love, we can change and change and change again, but what we love, what is at the core, stays the same. Thank you for listening to my story this morning. It is time. I have to put away all my fossils. It is time for our children to go to the religious education classes, and if there are any 6th and 7th graders in the room who are going to go, our 6th and 7th graders are visiting a Hindu temple today as part of their RE. So they can go out into the lobby because it's almost time for them to leave. So our children and youth can go out. Joy will play our sending song 3 times. We'll sing it through together once. Then at the 2nd time, our teachers will leave, and the 3rd time, our students will join them. Thank you.
Before we start the reading is inserted in the order of service. And if you don't have an order of service and would like one, raise your hand. I think everybody has one. Great. It has one typographical error that I made. Page 21 in section C23 is not part of the new proposal. Just happened to be the page number that I copied and pasted.
When I first attended a UU worship service in the 1970s, I received a little red and white wallet card with the principles of Unitarian Universalism printed on them, which were freedom, reason, and tolerance. And since 1985, I've been nourished by the 7 principles plus the 8th principle that we voted on. Now, as Chrissy mentioned, the UUA is proposing revision of Article 2 of the Unitarian Universalist Association bylaws and rules, Article 2, purposes and covenant, and this was the date of this document is January 17th, 2023. And as Reverend Roger was saying, if you want to read, you can look at this, and what I would encourage you to do is listen to what may sound familiar as well as what may be different. Purposes. The Unitarian Universalist Association will devote its resources to and use its organizational powers for religious, educational, and humanitarian purposes. Its primary purposes are to assist congregations in their vital ministries, support and train leaders, both lay and professional, to foster lifelong faith formation, to heal historic injustices, and to advance our Unitarian Universalist values in the world. The purpose of the Unitarian Universalist Association is to actively engage its members in the transformation of the world through liberating love. Values and covenant. As Unitarian Universalists, we covenant, we promise, congregation to congregation, and through our association, to support and assist one another in our ministries. We draw from our heritages of freedom, reason, hope, and courage, building on the foundation of love. Love is the power that holds us together and is at the center of our shared values. We are accountable to one another for doing the work of living our shared values through the spiritual discipline of love. Inseparable from one another, these shared values are interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence. We covenant to cherish Earth and all the beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. With humility and reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and we work to repair harm and damaged relationships. Pluralism. We celebrate that we are all sacred beings diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and our commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. Justice. We work to be diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racism and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions. Transformation. We adapt to the changing world. We covenant to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. Openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. Generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources, Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. Equity. We declare that every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. We covenant to use our time, wisdom, attention, and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. Inspirations. As Unitarian Universalists, we use and are inspired by sacred and secular understandings that help us to live into our values. We respect the histories, context, and cultures in which they were created and are currently practiced. These sources ground us and sustain us in ordinary, difficult, and joyous times. Grateful for the religious ancestries we inherit and the diversity which enriches our faith, we are called to ever deepen and expand our wisdom. Inclusion. Systems of power, privilege, and oppression have traditionally created barriers for persons and groups with particular identities, ages, abilities, and histories. We pledge to replace such barriers with ever-widening circles of solidarity and mutual respect. We strive to be an association of congregations that truly welcome all persons who share our values. We commit to being an association of congregations that empowers and enhances everyone's participation, especially those with historically marginalized identities. Freedom of belief. Congregational freedom and the individual rights of conscience are central to our Unitarian Universalist heritage. Congregations may establish statements of purpose, covenants, and bonds of union so long as they do not require that members adhere to a particular creed. Thank you.
If he had to walk 1 mile in my shoes, tell me, sister, what would Jesus do? Tell me what you gonna do. If you had to walk 1 mile in my shoes, if you had to walk 1 mile in my shoes.
Thank you. Well, I shouldn't confess this, but sometimes as I'm preparing a sermon, I look back over my 45 years in the ministry to see if I've ever discussed the topic before. And I found a file that I wrote on my K-Pro 2 computer in February of 1984 about the proposed changes in our purposes and principles. And I wrote, critics of our religion commonly charge that Unitarian Universalist churches are havens for people who have no firm religious beliefs. On this issue, we have become the butt of many jokes. One wit has written that the only thing we agree on is that Mary was not a virgin. Another wit tells the story of a young bride-to-be who went into a fabric store. She asked for 50 yards of chiffon for a nightgown. 50 yards. The surprised clerk asked why she needed so much material. She explained, well, my fiancé is a Unitarian Universalist. He would rather seek than find. Well, despite these jokes, we Unitarian Universalists do have a statement of purpose. It is Article 2 of the bylaws that govern our association. Every few years, we take Article 2 out, look at it, and consider whether we should make changes. Now, February 1984 is one of those times. You may be thinking, with all the urgent issues that we need to address in 1984, we should not be expending our time, energy, and limited resources on rewriting a document. In response, I can say this. Even if we only look at Article 2 every 15 years or so, the process does serve a valuable function. That function is to remind us of where we have been and where we have come. The changes that we have made over the years reflect the progress that we have made as an evolving religious body. For me, at least, this concrete evidence of our progress is reassuring. It tells me that there is meaning to this process of gathering each week, Sunday morning, to talk about religion. We Unitarian Universalists do seem to change and grow in our understanding of life from year to year and from generation to generation. You have before you the proposed changes. They will be presented at the General Assembly in Columbus, Ohio in June of 1984. The proposals have already stirred up considerable controversy. That ends my 1984 sermon. Now, let's move up to the present time. The current Article 2 is in the front of the hymnal, the document that was approved in 1985. Now, some of you have an older hymnal, and some of you have a newer one. There was one change that was made, and the newer ones have it. But first, if you turn 5 pages in, and the pages are not numbered, till you reach "We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association" in the hymnal, you'll see what our statement is today. And you can compare that with the proposal that's inserted in the order of service. The passage that was added at the bottom is spiritual teachings of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with the rhythms of nature. And if you have a new edition, it's in there. If you don't, it's missing. And as you can see, the proposed statement, the one inserted in the order of service, is vastly different from what we have now. For example, the new proposed changes remove the second part of the current Article 2, which is called the sources. There's no more the sources section. If you take the hymnal again and now turn back towards the front to the table of contents. And if you look in the table of contents, you'll see the word hymns at the top, and then you'll see transcendent mystery and wonder. Transcendent mystery and wonder. Now, if you go back to the sources, about 5 pages in, you'll see direct experience of that transcendent mystery and wonder. In other words, the entire hymnal is organized based on the sources, which are now being removed. Of course, the hymnal was published 30 years ago, so maybe after we revise our purposes, we'll revise our hymnal. Now, again, looking at the 1985 statement, the original proposal in 1985, which was suggested, was a statement that said, recognizing our Judeo-Christian heritage, as well as our other traditions, and seeking lasting values and new insights. And the word God did not appear there. So in the early 1980s, this was very controversial. Time magazine, you all remember Time magazine, which was a major publication back in 1983, did a story announcing that Unitarian Universalists, the major religion story in their magazine, Unitarian Universalists were about to remove God from our statement of purposes. And one congregation, at least one, announced it would withdraw from the association if they removed God in the statement. Now, as you can see, they restored it midway down under sources, Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. So God got back in there after Time magazine caused a controversy. But look at the new proposal. The word God does not appear. And as far as I can tell from looking at the various comments people are making on the internet, that's not very controversial in 2023. Now, I've been a Unitarian Universalist all my life, and I've been a Unitarian all my life and a Unitarian Universalist since 1961 when the merger occurred. In my memory, before 1985, in the churches I attended, Article 2 of the Unitarian Universalist bylaws never came up. We never discussed it. I only knew of its existence because I was expected to read the Unitarian Universalist bylaws as part of my preparation to become a minister. But it never came up in churches that I attended. The change occurred in 1985. Ministers started to preach about the purposes. When the hymnal came out in 1993, people could read on Sunday morning before church started these statements. And if you're new to this church, if you come for the first time, often one of the things you do is you sit there and you look through the hymnal to see if it can give you a clue as to what this church is all about. And these are right there in the front. In some coming-of-age classes, where 13-year-olds were given a class in Unitarian Universalism in order to be considered coming of age and go through a ceremony, the 13-year-olds were required by their teachers to memorize the purposes so that they could state them from memory. Wallet-sized cards were printed with the purposes on them. We were invited to take a few of these cards so we could give them out to our family, to our friends who wanted to know what Unitarian Universalists believed. Then the Unitarian Universalist Association published 2 books about the purposes and principles for people to study. And then when I arrived to serve the Unitarian Universalist Church in Sarasota, Florida, about 12 years ago, I found that the interim minister before me had started a practice of the congregation saying one of the purposes at the start of every service. Over 7 Sundays, we would say them all, and then we would start over. For example, we would say, as we light this chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, we affirm our second principle: justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. The whole congregation would say these together. Over 7 Sundays, we would go through all of them. So if they're so popular, why change them? Well, Paula Cole Jones, who is in this picture on the far left side, Paula Cole Jones, after collaborating with congregations on multiculturalism issues for over 15 years, came to believe that a person can believe they are being a good Unitarian Universalist and follow the 7 principles without thinking about or dealing with racism or other oppressions. To correct this, she talked with others, and together they formed a grassroots movement. And in 2017, they proposed the 8th principle. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. Well, at the 2017 General Assembly, several groups of people proposed changes in the principles. Delegates overwhelmingly only adopted one. To be more inclusive, prophetic women and men was changed to prophetic people. Discussions of the 8th principle took place at that meeting, but no decision was made. Instead, the Unitarian Universalist Board of Trustees appointed the Article 2 Study Commission to integrate these conversations and to lead a discernment process for our association about our core values, about our covenant, about our purpose. The board gave the commission a broad charge to review and change the current purposes and principles. The board appointed Paula Cole Jones as one of the members of the commission, and after 2.5 years of study and conversations with thousands of Unitarian Universalists, the Article 2 Study Commission submitted their proposal to the Unitarian Universalist Board of Trustees at its January 20th meeting. And this spring, congregational delegates and the board can propose amendments to the proposal. Amendments will be considered at the 2023 GA in June in Pittsburgh. And I just want to remind you that Pittsburgh is a mere 300 miles away from us to the west, and I hope we will be able to send a full delegation to this meeting. Changes in the bylaws, that's a 2-year process. This year, if any of the delegate amendments pass, and if the proposal receives a majority approval, the study commission will make any necessary changes to create a final draft to be considered at the 2024 General Assembly. To be adopted, the final proposal will require a 2/3 majority, at the 2024 General Assembly. Well, I have to say, I really like the current purposes and principles, but I'm also okay with the new proposal. When it first arrived in my email, I looked for two words. The first word was reason, and I found it. We draw from our heritages freedom, reason, hope, and courage. This is important to me. In explaining who we are in the conversation, I say that the use of reason is the unique quality of our church. Reason is the special strength of Unitarian Universalism. When others invite us to take something on faith, we want to know, is it rational? Is it logical? Is the faith statement consistent with what we know about the world? Is it probable based on our own experience? I remember once a person said, we prayed to God for money to build our church, and we received a check for $25,000. And I said, I'd love to see the signature on that check. We asked for evidence. Many scientists have also been Unitarians. In the year 1553, Michael Servetus, using reason, pointed out that the original accounts of Jesus' life do not mention the Trinity. Besides studying the New Testament, Servetus was a physician who used reason and observation to study the human body. In his book, The Restoration of Christianity, he described the circulation of human blood through the body. Before Servetus, no one had ever described the true function of the heart. Today, medical historians call Servetus' description of the circulation system the single most important statement about the workings of the human body in 1,500 years. In 1782, Joseph Priestley, a minister and a scientist, published his book, The History of the Corruptions of Christianity. He used reason to question the dogma of the Trinity. As a minister, Priestley founded the first Unitarian church in the United States, in Philadelphia. As a scientist, he used reason and experimental method to discover oxygen. In 1847, Marie Mitchell was the first American woman astronomer. She was active in the Unitarian Church on Nantucket Island. Using reason and the scientific method, she discovered a comet and became one of the most celebrated American scientists of the 19th century. In 1963, Linus Pauling, a chemist and political activist, became the only person to win 2 unshared Nobel Prizes in 2 different fields, chemistry and peace. He was one of the most influential scientists in history and ranks among the most important scientists in any field of the 20th century. Linus Pauling. He was a member of the First Unitarian Church in Los Angeles. In 1989, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, a computer scientist, invented the World Wide Web. In a list of the 10 greatest living scientists in the world today, Tim is ranked number 1. He is a member of the First Parish Unitarian Universalist in Lexington, Massachusetts. When researchers ask which American religious groups are the most educated, it turns out that Hindus are the most educated. 77% of Hindus surveyed went to college. Number 2 are Unitarian Universalists. 67% of us have college degrees. The value that we place on reason also helps our children do well on tests. You parents will be happy to hear that on average, Unitarian Universalist teenagers get the highest SAT scores of any religious group. Jews are the second highest scoring religious group. Of course, other religions use reason. However, at some point, other religions ask their members to suspend logic to suspend evidence and scientific method, and accept on faith the teaching of their leaders or the writing of Scripture. We do not. So I was happy to find the word in the new proposed purposes. But what makes us different and unique is not the same as our goal, as our mission. When the new proposed purposes arrived in the email, I looked for the word reason, but after I found it, I looked for another word, and I was happy to find the word love in 5 places. I believe the central goal, the primary mission of this religious movement is to learn how to love each other and learn how to love the earth. Now, this doesn't make us unique. It is a goal we share with many other religious groups. Like many other religious groups, we gather here to learn to love each other, to learn to love others in the community, and to learn to love the earth and all its creatures. What makes us unique is the extent that we use reason as a tool in helping us learn to love each other. And our use of reason as a tool in learning to love leads us in very radical directions. Unitarian Universalists openly welcome gay and lesbian people to our churches. Unlike many other religious groups, we ordain gay and lesbian people in our ministry. Unlike many other religious groups, our clergy officiate at ceremonies of union between same-sex couples, of weddings. Our use of reason and love causes us to take seriously the science on global warming and to look hard at the ways we can reduce the burning of coal and other fossil fuels that are causing climate change. In 2007, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change was the shared winner of the Nobel Prize for Peace, and at least 2 of the scientists who serve on the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change are Unitarian Universalists. One was a member of my church in Sarasota, another was a member of the Oxford, England Unitarian Church. Our use of reason and love has led us to be active in the civil rights movement, to integrate our churches, to join in protest marches, to question systems of power, privilege, and oppression, and to place in our churches the words, Black Lives Matter. Using the tool of reason to learn to love is a demanding discipline. It requires a rigid process of questioning, observing, and drawing conclusions. After we have gone through the process, we must have the courage to share our conclusions. We must be willing to let the new information change us. So what makes Unitarian Universalists different from other religious groups? The use of reason. It is our special strength as a religion. However, reason is not our goal. It is a tool. Like many religions, love is our goal. How do we love each other, given the reality that we often see things differently? We have diverse needs and competing desires. How do we love each other when some of us are young and some of us are old? When some of us are extroverts and some of us are introverts? When some of us are gay and some of us are straight? When some of us are born with light skin pigmentation and others of us are born with darker skin pigmentation? How do we love each other? Reason is our tool as we work to realize our goal of love. So returning to the new proposed Article 2, I must confess, being an old guy, I like the old version. But because the Article 2 Commission is made up of so many nice people, some of whom are my friends and are really nice people, I'm okay with the change. The 2 most important words are in the latest version for me. Now, in this church, each of you are free to develop your own opinion, and I hope you will. You don't have to think the way I do. You're free to develop your own ideas about this document. And then after you do, I invite you to consider going to Pittsburgh, the lovely city, in June to participate in this conversation. Let's sing our closing hymn. As we extinguish our chalice, I invite you to join with me in our closing words. For those who come here seeking God, may God go with you. For those who come embracing life, may life return your affection. And for those who come to seek the path, may a way be found and the courage to take it step by step. Blessed be.